The sound of crying echoed through the fancy private jet terminal, mixing with the low hum of expensive conversations and clicking high heels on marble floors. 12-year-old twin girls stood near the huge glass windows, their small hands pressed against the cold surface as they watched planes take off into the cloudy afternoon sky. "Please don't make him go," Luna whispered, her voice breaking as tears rolled down her cheeks. Her twin sister Nova stood beside her, crying just as hard. Both girls wearing matching pink dresses that their new parents had bought them just yesterday. Their 15-year-old brother Damon sat on a nearby bench, trying his best to look brave even though his heart was breaking into a million pieces. He wore his old sneakers, the same ones he'd had for 2 years, and his favorite hoodie that was getting too small for him. Next to his feet sat a beat-up black duffel bag that contained everything he owned in the world. "Girls, come away from the window," said Mrs. Sterling, walking over in her designer shoes and perfect makeup. She was a kind woman, but she didn't really understand what was happening. "Your flight leaves in 30 minutes and we need to get through security." Mr. Sterling stood nearby, checking his expensive watch and talking quietly on his phone about some business deal. He was the type of man who solved problems with money, but this wasn't the kind of problem money could fix. The twins ran to Damon and threw their arms around him. "We don't want to go without you," Nova cried into his shoulder. "Tell them we want to stay with you." Damon's throat felt tight, but he forced himself to smile. He had been taking care of these girls for almost 3 years now, ever since they all ended up in foster care together. They weren't related by blood, but they might as well have been real siblings. They had shared everything: cold nights when the heat didn't work, meals when there wasn't enough food to go around, and scary moments when they didn't know where they'd be living next. Hey, Damon said softly, pulling both girls close. "Listen to me. You're getting a real family now, a mom and dad who can give you everything you deserve. That big house with your own rooms, good schools, nice clothes. This is good, okay? This is what we always dreamed about." But even as he said the words, they felt like lies in his mouth. He had dreamed about them all staying together like a real family. He had imagined some nice couple adopting all 3 of them, sitting around a dinner table every night, helping each other with homework, going on family trips together. "But you're our family," Luna said, looking up at him with red, swollen eyes. "You taught us how to tie our shoes. You read us stories when we couldn't sleep. You shared your food with us when we were hungry. You're our brother." Mrs. Sterling walked over and gently placed her hand on Luna's shoulder. "Sweetie, Damon is going to be just fine. The people at the group home are very nice, and he'll get to finish high school there. Maybe even get a scholarship to college. You'll see him again someday." Someday. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. Someday could mean years from now. Someday might never come at all. Damon looked at Mrs. Sterling and tried to keep his voice respectful. "Ma'am, I know you and your husband are good people. I can see how much you already love the girls. But they're scared. Maybe I could visit sometimes? Or we could video call." Mr. Sterling finished his phone call and walked over. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. "Son, I understand this is difficult, but Luna and Nova need stability now. They need to focus on their new life, their new family, having connections to the past. Well, it might just confuse them and make it harder for everyone to move forward." The words hit Damon like a punch to the stomach. Connections to the past. Is that all he was to them now? Just some kid they used to know? "I'm not just their past," Damon said quietly, his hands shaking a little. "I love them. They love me. We take care of each other." "And that's wonderful," Mrs. Sterling said, though her smile looked forced. "But they're children. They need parents, not another child trying to take care of them. You did your best, Damon, but now it's time for adults to take over." Across the terminal, a voice came over the loudspeaker announcing that Flight 4847 to Chicago was now boarding. That was Damon's flight, his ticket back to the group home where he'd wait until he turned 18 and aged out of the system. The twins started crying harder when they heard the announcement. No, Nova kept saying, clinging to Damon's arm. "Don't get on that plane. Please don't leave us." Damon felt his own eyes getting wet, but he couldn't let the girls see him cry. He had always been the strong one, the one who told them everything would be okay when they were scared. Even now, when his whole world was falling apart, he had to be strong for them. "Look at me," he said, kneeling down so he was at their eye level. "You two are the smartest, bravest, most amazing girls in the whole world. And you know what? You're going to have an incredible life with Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. You're going to go to great schools, make lots of friends, maybe even travel to different countries. You might become doctors or teachers or anything you want to be. But what about you? Luna whispered. Me? I'm going to be fine too. I'm going to finish school, maybe go to college, get a good job. And someday when we're all grown up, we'll find each other again. I promise. It was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep, but he had to give them something to hold on to. Mrs. Sterling checked her watch.
We really need to go through security now.
The pilot is waiting. The final boarding call for Damon's flight echoed through the terminal. Other passengers were already walking toward his gate, dragging their suitcases behind them. Damon stood up and picked up his duffel bag. It felt heavier than it had that morning, like it was carrying all his broken dreams inside. He looked at the Sterling family, at the girls who had been his whole world for 3 years, and at the adults who were about to take them away from him forever. Take good care of them, he said to Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. They're special. They're everything. Then he bent down one more time and hugged both girls as tight as he could. He memorized the way they smelled like the strawberry shampoo from their new home. The way Luna always twisted her hair around her finger when she was nervous. The way Nova hummed little songs under her breath when she was happy. I love you both, he whispered. Don't ever forget that. As he walked toward his gate, he could hear them calling his name, their voices getting smaller and smaller with each step he took. He didn't turn around because he knew if he looked back, he wouldn't have the strength to keep walking. But just before he reached the security checkpoint, something inside him shifted. Something that had been building up for 3 years of taking care of those girls. 3 years of being told he wasn't good enough, wasn't the right fit, wasn't what families were looking for. He stopped walking. His hand tightened around the strap of his duffel bag, and slowly he turned around. Standing there in the middle of that fancy airport terminal, Damon felt like the world had stopped spinning. The sounds around him became muffled, the announcements, the crying, the footsteps of people rushing to catch their flights. All he could hear was his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Mrs. Sterling called out to him, Damon, honey, you need to go. You'll miss your flight, but he couldn't move. His feet felt glued to the polished floor as memories came flooding back like a movie playing in his head. He remembered the first day he met Luna and Nova. 3 years ago at the Riverside Children's Home. He had been 12 then, already bounced around from 3 different foster families who decided he was too much work, or not the right fit for their family. The twins had just arrived that cold October morning, holding hands so tight their knuckles were white. They were only 9 years old, wearing clothes that were too big for them and carrying a single plastic bag with their belongings. Their grandmother, who had raised them since they were babies, had just passed away and they had nowhere else to go. Damon was sitting in the common room, pretending to watch TV but really just staring at the wall, when Mrs. Patterson, the home director, brought them in. Luna was crying silently, tears just rolling down her cheeks without any sound. Nova wasn't crying, but her eyes were wide and scared like a deer caught in headlights. Girls, this is Damon, Mrs. Patterson had said. He's been here for a few months. Damon, would you mind showing Luna and Nova around? Maybe help them get settled? Most of the older kids at the home ignored the little ones. It was easier that way, less heartbreak when they eventually left. But something about those 2 little girls made Damon's chest feel tight. Maybe it was because they looked so lost, or maybe because they reminded him of himself when he first got there. Sure, he had said, turning off the TV. Come on, I'll show you where everything is. He remembered how Nova had whispered to her sister, Is he nice? And how Luna had nodded, even though she had no reason to trust anyone at that point. Damon showed them the cafeteria, the sleeping areas, the small library with its worn-out books, and the playground outside with the rusty swings. The whole time they stayed close together, like they were afraid someone might separate them if they let go of each other's hands. Are you going to get adopted soon? Luna had asked him that first day as they sat on the front steps watching other kids play. Probably not, Damon had said honestly. Most people want little kids, not teenagers. But that's okay. I can take care of myself. We don't want to get adopted either, Nova had said quietly. We want to go back to Grandma's house. Damon's heart had broken for them. He wanted to tell them that their grandma was coming back, that everything would be okay, but he had learned not to make promises he couldn't keep. Well, he had said instead, until then we can look out for each other. Deal, and that's exactly what they did. When the girls had nightmares about their grandmother, Damon would sit by their beds and tell them silly stories until they fell back asleep. When Luna got picked on by some of the older girls for being too quiet, Damon stood up for her. When Nova got scared during thunderstorms, he taught her to count the seconds between the lightning and thunder to know how far away it was. The memory that hit him hardest was from their second Christmas at the home. The staff had tried to make it special with a small tree and some donated presents, but it still felt sad and empty. Most of the other kids had gotten visits from social workers or distant relatives, but the three of them had no one. They were sitting in the corner of the common room, watching a Christmas movie on the old TV when Nova started crying. Not the loud, dramatic crying that little kids usually do, but the quiet, heartbroken kind that was somehow much worse. "I miss Grandma," she had whispered. "She always made us hot chocolate on Christmas morning, and we'd open our presents sitting on her big bed." Luna started crying too, and Damon felt completely helpless. He was only 13, but these two little girls were looking at him like he could somehow fix everything, like he was their big brother who was supposed to make it all better. "Wait here," he had said and ran to his room. He came back with the only valuable thing he owned, a small pocket knife his father had given him before everything fell apart. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. "I can't give you your grandma back," he had told them, sitting down on the floor. "And I can't give you a real Christmas like she used to. But I can promise you something. As long as I'm here, you'll never be alone. We're family now, okay? Not because some paperwork says so, but because we choose to be." He had given them the knife to share. "This was my dad's. It's not much, but it's important to me. I want you to have it because you're important to me too." From that day on, they really were a family. When prospective parents came to look at the children, the twins would only talk to couples who were interested in all three of them. They turned down good families, nice people who could have given them everything, because those people only wanted the cute little girls, not the teenage boy who came with them. "They're a package deal," Luna had told one couple who had seemed perfect. "If you don't want our brother, then we don't want you either." Damon had tried to talk them out of it so many times. "You need parents," he would tell them. "Real parents who can take care of you properly." "I'm just a kid too." "You're not just a kid," Nova would always say back. "You're our kid, our brother." Standing there in that airport, Damon realized that Mrs. Sterling was wrong about one thing. The girls didn't need to forget their past to have a good future. Their past had made them who they were, loyal, brave, and loving. It had taught them that family wasn't about blood or money or perfect houses. It was about showing up for each other when things got hard. He looked back at Luna and Nova still crying by the window. He looked at Mr. and Mrs. Sterling checking their phones and looking impatient. He thought about the group home waiting for him, where he'd spend the next 3 years until he aged out of the system. He thought about all the nights he'd lie awake wondering if the girls were okay, if they were happy, if they ever thought about him. And then he thought about something else. He thought about what his grandmother used to tell him before she got sick and couldn't take care of him anymore. "Baby," she used to say, "when something matters to you, really matters, you don't just give up without a fight. You find a way." Damon dropped his duffel bag right there on the terminal floor and walked back toward his family. Not the family he was born into, but the one he had chosen and the one that had chosen him back. "Mr. Sterling," he called out, his voice stronger than it had been all day. "Sir, I need to talk to you." Mr. Sterling looked up from his phone with a confused expression as Damon approached. The businessman clearly wasn't used to teenagers interrupting his day, especially not ones who were supposed to be boarding flights in the opposite direction. "Yes?" Mr. Sterling said, his voice carrying the tone of someone who was used to solving problems quickly and moving on to the next task. Damon's hands were shaking, but he forced himself to look the man directly in the eyes. His grandmother had always taught him that if you wanted someone to take you seriously, you had to act serious. "Sir, I know you don't know me very well, and I know this might sound crazy, but I need to ask you something important." Mrs. Sterling walked over, looking concerned. "Damon, sweetie, your flight is boarding. If you miss it, there might not be another one today." "I understand that, ma'am," Damon said politely, "but I've been thinking, and I can't get on that plane. Not like this, not without trying something different." Luna and Nova had stopped crying and were watching with wide eyes. Other people in the terminal started looking over too. probably wondering why a teenage boy with a beat-up duffel bag was having such an intense conversation with a wealthy-looking family. "What exactly are you trying to say?" Mr. Sterling asked, checking his watch again. Damon took a deep breath. This was it, his one chance to change everything. "Mr. Sterling, I did some research on your family before today. I know you own Sterling Landscape Design. I know you have contracts with some of the biggest estates in the state. I know you're successful because you care about quality work." Mr. Sterling's eyebrows went up. He clearly hadn't expected a 15-year-old to know anything about his business. "I also know," Damon continued, "that good landscaping companies are always looking for hard workers, especially during busy season. People who show up on time, who aren't afraid to get dirty, who treat the job like it matters." "Son, where exactly are you going with this?" Mr. Sterling asked, though his tone was less impatient now and more curious. "I'm going somewhere that might sound impossible, but hear me out," Damon said. "I don't need you to adopt me. I don't need fancy clothes or a big bedroom or money for college. I just need one thing, to not lose my sisters." "Damon," Mrs. Sterling started to say, but he held up his hand respectfully. "Please just let me finish. I know I'm only 15, but I've been taking care of myself and others for a long time. I can work. I can work harder than most adults you've probably hired. Give me a job with your landscaping company. Let me live in a staff house or garage apartment or even a tent in your backyard. I don't care. Just don't make me disappear from their lives completely." The twins moved closer, hope starting to replace the despair in their eyes. Mr. Sterling was quiet for a moment, processing what he'd just heard. "You're asking me to hire a 15-year-old boy with no work experience, no transportation, and no permanent address? I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that family matters more than paperwork," Damon said. "I know I don't have experience with professional landscaping, but I've been maintaining the grounds at the children's home for 2 years. I know how to use a lawnmower, how to plant flowers, how to trim hedges. I'm not afraid of hard work or long hours." He pulled out his phone, an old cracked thing that barely worked, and showed Mr. Sterling some pictures. "These are the gardens I planted at Riverside Children's Home. I started them from nothing because the kids needed something beautiful to look at. Something that showed someone cared." Mrs. Sterling leaned over to look at the pictures and her expression softened. The photos showed neat rows of vegetables, colorful flower beds, and a small area with benches where children could sit and read. "You did all this yourself?" she asked. "Me and some of the younger kids," Damon admitted. "I taught them how to plant seeds and water properly and pull weeds. It gave us something to do together, something positive." "This is actually quite impressive," Mr. Sterling said, looking more carefully at the phone screen. "You have a natural eye for design." Damon felt a tiny spark of hope. "Mr. Sterling, I know this sounds like a big risk. You don't know me. You don't know if I'll stick around or work hard or cause problems. But I can promise you this. I will work harder for you than any employee you've ever had, because this job wouldn't just be about money for me. It would be about staying close to the most important people in my world. Even if we agreed to something like this," Mr. Sterling said slowly, "where would you live? You can't stay in the main house. Luna and Nova need time to adjust to their new life without complications." "I understand that completely," Damon said quickly. "I looked up your property online. You have a large estate with several buildings. Maybe there's a tool shed I could fix up, or a basement room, or even just space where I could put up a small tent. I don't need much. Just a roof over my head and the chance to see my sisters sometimes." Luna couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Daddy Sterling," she said, using the name they'd started calling him that morning. "Please say yes. We promise we'll be good. We'll study hard and do our chores and everything. Just please don't make him go away forever. Please," Nova added, her voice barely a whisper. "He's not trouble. He's the best person we know." Mrs. Sterling looked at her husband, and some kind of silent conversation passed between them. Finally, she spoke up. "Damon, what you're proposing, it's very unusual. We've never hired someone so young, and we certainly never expected to have 3 children to think about instead of 2. I know it's a lot to ask," Damon said, "but I'm not asking you to take care of me. I'm asking you to let me take care of myself while staying close to them. I'll earn my keep. I'll prove I'm worth the trouble." Mr. Sterling was quiet for a long moment, staring at Damon like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You really researched my company?" "Yes, sir. Sterling Landscape Design has been in business for 12 years. You started it after you left your job as an architect Because you wanted to create beautiful outdoor spaces that families could enjoy together. Your biggest clients include the Riverside Country Club and 3 of the historical estates downtown. You employ 15 full-time workers during peak season. And you learned all this how? Public library computer and a lot of determination, Damon said. When something matters to you, you find a way to learn what you need to know. Mr. Sterling almost smiled at that. You know what, kid? That's exactly the kind of attitude that builds successful businesses. So you'll consider it? Damon asked, hardly daring to breathe. I'll consider a trial period, Mr. Sterling said carefully. 30 days. You work with my crew. You live in the apartment above our equipment garage. You follow all the rules and you prove that you can handle this arrangement without disrupting Luna and Nova's adjustment to their new home. The twins squealed and hugged each other, then rushed over to hug Damon. 30 days, Damon repeated, grinning for the first time all day. That's all I need to show you what I can do. We'll see about that, Mr. Sterling said, but his tone was warmer now. Come on then. Let's go home and figure out how to make this work. The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 in the morning, just like it had every day for the past 3 weeks. Damon rolled out of the narrow bed in the small apartment above the Sterling family's equipment garage, his muscles still aching from yesterday's work. The space wasn't much, just a tiny bedroom, a bathroom, and a corner with a hot plate and mini fridge. But it was his, and more importantly, it was only a few hundred yards away from where Luna and Nova were sleeping safely in their new home. He splashed cold water on his face and pulled on his work clothes, sturdy jeans, a long-sleeved shirt, and the work boots Mr. Sterling had bought him on his first day. Through his small window, he could see the main house where his sisters were probably still dreaming, tucked into beds with clean sheets and warm blankets. By 5 a.m., Damon was already loading equipment into the company truck alongside Carlos, the crew supervisor who had become something like a mentor to him. Carlos was a quiet man in his 40s who had worked for Sterling Landscape Design since the beginning. You're early again, kid, Carlos said, though he didn't sound annoyed. You know you don't have to beat the sun up every morning. I know, Damon said, hefting a bag of mulch into the truck. But I want to make sure I'm ready for whatever we're doing today. The truth was, Damon couldn't afford to be anything less than perfect. Every day of his 30-day trial period mattered. Every task was a chance to prove he deserved to stay. Every conversation with Mr. Sterling was a test he couldn't fail. Their first job that morning was at the Riverside Country Club, where they were installing a new flower garden near the main entrance. As they worked, Damon found himself thinking about the different techniques Carlos had taught him. How to prepare soil properly, which plants would thrive in different amounts of sunlight, how to arrange colors and heights to create the most visual impact. You've got good instincts, Carlos told him as they planted rows of bright marigolds. Most new guys just dig holes and stick plants in the ground. You actually think about how it's all going to look together. My grandmother used to say that everything in nature has a purpose, Damon said, carefully spacing each flower. Even in a garden, everything should have its place and its reason for being there. Around noon, Carlos sent Damon back to the Sterling estate to pick up more supplies. As he pulled the truck into the circular driveway, he saw Luna and Nova playing on the front lawn with their new tutor, a kind woman named Miss Rodriguez who was helping them catch up on the schooling they'd missed during their time in foster care. Damon, Luna called out when she saw him. She started to run over, but then stopped and looked back at Miss Rodriguez as if she needed permission. It's okay, Miss Rodriguez said with a smile. Take a 5-minute break. The twins ran over to where Damon was unloading equipment from the truck. They looked so different from 3 weeks ago. Their hair was neat and shiny. Their clothes were clean and perfectly fitted. And they both had gained weight from eating regular, healthy meals. How's school going? Damon asked, ruffling Nova's hair the way he used to at the children's home. It's good, Nova said. Miss Rodriguez says we're really smart and we'll catch up to other kids our age soon. We're learning about fractions, Luna added. And we read a whole book yesterday about a girl who goes on adventures. Damon felt a warm feeling in his chest. These were the kinds of opportunities he had always dreamed about for his sisters. Good education, patient teachers, books to read whenever they wanted. That's amazing, he said. I'm so proud of you both. Are you okay living in the garage? Nova asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. We wanted to ask Mama Sterling if you could have a room in the house with us, but she said it was better this way for now. The apartment is perfect, Damon assured her. It has everything I need and I can see the stars through my window at night. Remember how we used to make wishes on stars at the children's home? The girls nodded, their faces brightening at the memory. Well, every night I wish for you two to be happy and healthy and to have all the chances you deserve. And you know what? Those wishes are already coming true. Miss Rodriguez called the girls back for their lesson and Damon returned to work. But as he loaded mulch bags, he couldn't stop thinking about how different their lives had become. The girls were thriving in ways he had hoped for but hardly dared to believe would happen. They had stability, education, and two parents who clearly cared about their well-being. That evening, after his regular crew had gone home, Damon stayed behind to work on a special project. He had noticed that the area behind the main house, where it overlooked a small pond, had potential to be beautiful, but was currently just an empty stretch of grass. Using his own money from his paychecks, he had bought some flower seeds and small shrubs. He was digging holes for the shrubs when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around to find Mr. Sterling walking toward him, still wearing his business suit from a day of meetings. "You're working late," Mr. Sterling observed. "Yes, sir," Damon said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "This is my own time, though. Not company time. I wanted to do something nice for the area behind your house. I hope that's okay." Mr. Sterling looked at the neat rows of freshly planted flowers, the carefully arranged small shrubs, and the border stones Damon had arranged to define the garden space. "You didn't ask permission for this," Mr. Sterling said. Damon's heart sank. Had he overstepped? Was Mr. Sterling angry? "I'm sorry, sir. I should have asked first. I just thought—" "Relax, son," Mr. Sterling said, and there was something different in his voice, something warmer. "I'm not angry. I'm impressed. This is exactly the kind of initiative I look for in my employees. You saw an opportunity to improve something and you took action." They stood there in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun set over the pond. "You know," Mr. Sterling said, "when you first approached me at the airport, I thought you were just a desperate kid trying to avoid going back to the group home." "I was desperate," Damon admitted, "but not for the reasons you thought." "I'm starting to understand that," Mr. Sterling said. "Carlos tells me you're the hardest worker he's supervised in years. Your high school called today. Apparently you're maintaining straight A's despite working full-time. And Luna and Nova, well, they're settling in better than we expected, and I think having you nearby has helped with that transition." Damon held his breath, afraid to hope. "Your 30 days aren't up yet," Mr. Sterling continued, "but I think we both know you've already proven yourself. The question now is, what do you want to do long-term? This can't just be about staying close to the girls forever. You're smart, you're hardworking, and you have your whole life ahead of you." "I want to finish high school," Damon said without hesitation. "Maybe go to community college and study landscape architecture. I love this work, Mr. Sterling. It's not just a job to me, it's about creating something beautiful that makes people happy." Mr. Sterling smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." 6 months had passed since that emotional day at the airport terminal, and the Sterling estate looked completely different. Everywhere you looked, there were signs of Damon's hard work. Perfectly manicured lawns, colorful flower beds that bloomed in carefully planned sequences, and beautiful walkways lined with stones he had placed by hand. But the biggest changes weren't in the landscaping. They were in the family itself. It was a Saturday morning in early spring, and Luna and Nova's 13th birthday was just 2 days away. Damon was kneeling in the garden behind the house, planting their favorite flowers, sunflowers just like the ones their grandmother used to grow. He wanted everything to be perfect for their party. "Those are looking beautiful," came a voice behind him. Damon turned to see Mrs. Sterling walking toward him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Over the past few months, she had started bringing him coffee during his weekend work, and they would talk about the girls, about his studies, about his plans for the future. "Thank you," Damon said, accepting the warm cup gratefully. "I wanted to surprise them. Sunflowers were always special to them and their grandmother." Mrs. Sterling sat down on the stone bench Damon had built near the pond. "You know, when we first decided to adopt Luna and Nova, I thought we were just gaining 2 daughters. I never imagined we'd end up with—" She paused, looking at Damon with an expression he couldn't quite read. "With an employee who works too hard?" Damon suggested with a small smile. "No," Mrs. Sterling said quietly. With a son, Damon nearly dropped his coffee cup. Ma'am? Damon, my husband and I have been talking for weeks. Actually, we've been talking since that day at the airport when you turned around and refused to get on that plane. You've become so much more than an employee to us. You've become family. Damon's hand started shaking slightly. He set down his coffee cup and looked at Mrs. Sterling, hardly daring to hope he understood what she was saying. The girls aren't the only ones who have transformed over these months, Mrs. Sterling continued. You've shown us what real character looks like. You've worked harder than men twice your age. You've maintained perfect grades while holding down a full-time job. You've never asked for anything more than the chance to be close to your sisters. Mrs. Sterling, let me finish, she said gently. More importantly, you've shown us what it means to love someone unconditionally. The way you care for Luna and Nova. The way you've always put their happiness before your own. That's the kind of love that builds real families. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. David and I would like to offer you something, but only if it's what you want. No pressure, no expectations. Damon's heart was pounding as she handed him the envelope. With trembling fingers, he opened it and saw official-looking papers with lots of legal language he didn't understand. But at the top, in bold letters, he could make out the words, Petition for Adoption. You want to adopt me? Damon whispered. We want to make official what's already true in our hearts, Mrs. Sterling said, her own eyes getting misty. You're not just Luna and Nova's brother. You're our son, if you'll have us as parents. Damon stared at the papers, his vision blurring with tears he couldn't hold back anymore. After years of being told he was too old, too much trouble, not the right fit, here was a family that saw him as he truly was. But I'm almost 16, he managed to say. Most people want babies or little kids. Most people don't know what they're missing, came another voice. Damon looked up to see Mr. Sterling walking toward them, still in his pajamas and robe, holding his own cup of coffee. I've been watching you for 6 months. Son, Mr. Sterling said, sitting down beside his wife. I've seen you work 16-hour days without complaining. I've seen you help Luna with her math homework even when you were exhausted. I've seen you give Nova your own dinner when you thought she was still hungry. I've seen you turn down higher-paying job offers from my competitors because you didn't want to leave your family. You knew about those job offers? Damon asked, surprised. Mr. Sterling chuckled. Word gets around in this business. 3 different landscaping companies have tried to poach you in the last month. Good workers are hard to find, especially ones with your eye for design and your work ethic. But I would never leave, Damon said quickly. This is my home. You're my family. That's exactly why we want to make it official, Mrs. Sterling said. Damon, you could age out of the foster system in 2 years and be completely on your own. Or you could be our son, with all the support and love and opportunities that come with that. There's something else, Mr. Sterling added. I've been talking to my old architecture firm. They have an internship program for high school students interested in landscape design. It would mean working with some of the best designers in the state, learning about the business side of things, maybe even getting some college courses paid for. Damon felt overwhelmed. I don't understand. Why? Why would you do all this for me? Because, came 2 voices in unison. Luna and Nova appeared from behind a large oak tree, grinning from ear to ear. They had obviously been hiding there, listening to the entire conversation. Because you're our brother, Luna said, running over to hug him. And because families don't give up on each other, Nova added, joining the hug. How long were you 2 hiding there? Mrs. Sterling asked, though she was laughing. Since you came outside with the coffee, Nova admitted. We wanted to see Damon's face when you gave him the papers. And? Mr. Sterling asked Damon, what do you say? Ready to be stuck with us permanently? Damon looked around at the 4 people surrounding him. At Mrs. Sterling with her kind eyes. At Mr. Sterling, who had given him a chance when no one else would. At Luna and Nova, who had never stopped believing in him. He thought about the scared, angry boy who had almost gotten on a plane 6 months ago, convinced he was destined to be alone forever. I say yes, he whispered, then louder. I say yes to all of it. The adoption, the internship, being part of this crazy, wonderful family. The group hug that followed was the kind that would live in all their memories forever. Messy and tearful and full of the kind of joy that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong. Later that afternoon, as they all sat around the kitchen table filling out paperwork and talking about the future, Luna looked up from her homework. Damon, She said, "Yeah? Remember that first day when you promised we'd always be family?" "I remember. You kept your promise," she said simply, even when it seemed impossible. Damon reached over and squeezed her hand. Some promises are too important to break. Outside, the sunflowers he had planted were just starting to push through the soil, reaching toward the light, growing into something beautiful together.